I'm gonna just literally get right off the gate and just say I don't like action movies at all whatsoever. And it was a realization that I had recently that I just don't like action movies, and we'll get into that later. But before we continue, you yourself have told me to watch this movie for years.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be talking about Die Hard, your favorite holiday movie, if you will. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Camilo to the Miss Retrospective, a person who I've known for damn near like over 20 years now. So we go way, way, way back. And that just kind of should show you guys literally like how long he's been trying to tell me to watch this movie and whatnot. So I'm glad that I finally got it off the list. But Camilo, so people know who you are, a little bit about you, why this is your favorite movie or something. Feel free to let them know, I guess, like what your past is in movies and stuff. That way, you know, they can kind of get an idea of where you come from with your opinions.
Yeah, so I mean, I've known you since we were in 6th grade. So yeah, a little over 20 years. And it's actually funny because a show that we both liked together, or at least I liked a lot, maybe your sister did too, I think, as friends. It's kind of the reason that I even got Die Hard in my radar was how some of the characters were such big fans of it. And I was like, oh, I don't know what that is. Let me check it out. I ended up falling in love with it. And then since then, so I guess, since 6th grade, I've been asking you to watch a Die Hard. So a 20-year journey to get to this point. Pretty okay.
It was worth it, though. I think it was worth it. But that's actually funny that you mentioned Friends, because Friends, well, look, okay, so I started watching older stuff later on in life just because I had more time and I had, you know, stuff to do and whatnot. I actually watched Friends in full for the first time over the pandemic. So it's been about 5 years since I watched it in full. And the funny thing is, like, everybody told me that it was such a great show. It was phenomenal. And I saw the glimpses of greatness.
Yeah.
But I think the best parts of the show, and I feel the only good parts of the show, and again, my opinion, was Chandler and Monica. Everybody else kind of just felt kind of, and maybe Phoebe. Phoebe was also great. Joey was kind of like spurts and moments that were kind of funny and everything. But I think the most complete part of the show was just Monica and Chandler's entire journey, which I feel the show kind of centered around them. So
it might also just be because it's been so definitive as a sitcom that sitcoms since then have adapted a lot of stuff from them. So you've probably seen a lot of those storylines and story beats over and over and over again.
I mean, Ross and Rachel is like the epitome of like, will they, won't they story that they make fun of in every show.
Yeah.
But it was just funny, like, and then obviously another one that I watched was The Office, and that one I thought was sensational from start to end. And you see a lot of that influence now, like Modern Family, Parks and Rec, which was made by the same person. But you know, like that mockumentary style was kind of like really made by The Office, I feel.
And actually, a lot of sitcoms use Die Hard as a big pop culture. Like even The Office had its whole Third Level Midnight, which had a bunch of little beats too.
I'm gonna need to rewatch that now. No, like I didn't even think about that. Like I know when I started the movie, Heather even told me, it's like, you're gonna love the Bob's Burgers episode now even more, the one where they do the musical. And I'm like, maybe. And like after watching it, I'm like, I get it now. I rewatched the Epic Rap Battle of History with John McClane. I was like, I get it now. So there's a lot of little things that I kind of got from this movie, just, you know, going back to watching stuff. But yeah, so why is it your favorite? I guess one of your favorite movies. We'll keep on the holiday trend here in just a little bit.
Yeah. So I mean, I think for me, and one of the things that Die Hard did the most is reshape how we view action heroes, especially back in the 80s, where it was all big muscle men, larger than life heroes. John McClane was more of an everyman. He was just kind of a guy. And you can kind of see it as the movie progresses. He's just sort of getting beat up. He wasn't just brushing off every bullet wound. By the end of the movie, he's pretty bloodied, tired, just sweaty, just went through it. And so I think as I grew older as well, just that type of action hero and just character in general is one that resonates to me a lot. I have a Hellboy tattoo for a lot of that same reasons. As a character, he's very everyman. He's a blue-collar guy, just in situations that he'd rather not be in, but because he is in it, he's going to try his best. And I think that's what I love about Die Hard in general, is just, it's like one guy doing his best. He didn't want to be there, but he's there, and he's going to make the best out of it, try to help as many people as he can.
That's something I didn't even think about either. Like, you know, the time frame, right? Because when we started it yesterday, I asked Heather, what year did this come out? She's like, 1988. And I was like, okay, now I have to completely reshape my brain, because, you know, everything in perspective, right? That's when you really like realize just how something can really become iconic. And that's another reason for the show. And I mean, even the episode that released today was the Hell in a Cell episode that I did with RJ, where I talk about perspective. I didn't like the match to when I watched, I was like, I don't get it. But after that podcast episode, I was like, okay, now I understand it a little bit more. It's still not my cup of tea, and it's a decent match for what it was at the time. But with the perception and the everything that leads up to it, and the climate of cinema at the time, that makes a lot more sense, because they even mentioned Rambo in the movie. They mentioned Schwarzenegger and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I like that they referenced it, because then it puts my mind like this was already a thing, because Rambo and Schwarzenegger were 70s action stars, 70s, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was just really cool to like for them to tip the cap to the former action heroes, introducing a new one and everything. And you're right, he was just a New York cop. That's who he was. That's literally it. And he got caught in a situation that he shouldn't have been in. He just wanted to go see his family. That's literally it. And now all of a sudden, tower lockdown, boom.
And since then, we've gotten Die Hard in a bunch of different ways. Die Hard on the Bus with Speed. A bunch of the Die Hard sequels are the same thing. But just he became this archetype that spawned a new meta of action heroes. Not all of them are as good as Die Hard, so Die Hard's definitely the gold standard, and that's why.
I can't stop thinking about the Threat Level Midnight, because I'm gonna go back and watch it and be like, I see all the things now. Because just like Sixth Sense, the other movie episode that I did, I see a lot of like the influences and like little references to things here and there. And now I feel like that I've seen Die Hard, I've experienced it. It's just completely going to change everything. I was like, oh, that's a Die Hard reference. Oh, that's a Die Hard reference. That's influenced by Die Hard, et cetera, et cetera. And I could see why it's such a beloved movie. So I'm just going to get right to it, because honestly, I did like the movie. I'm not an action fan at all. I think action, I don't want to call it like brainless, because I think that's just an insult to anybody performing any kind of art. But I feel it's like my least favorite type of movie, just because it just seems like unnecessary violence. And that's something we talked about briefly before we got started here off camera and whatnot. But I just don't like the unnecessary violence. Like for me, I like superhero movies, and people are gonna be like, oh, that's Kirby, that's violent. I'm like, yeah, but it's make believe, it's superheroes, right? And for some reason, my brain just can't detach itself from that, because I don't like to, be a violent. I don't like to see violence. I just don't. It doesn't sit right with me, because I like being a peaceful person for more often than not. But I detached myself from that. I was like, let me come at this from just a entertainment standpoint. And I do like the fact that, like you said, it introduced a new kind of action hero, like somebody that could just be a person caught in a situation that they weren't expecting to be in, and then just, basically saving everybody, because that's what they had to do. Like the adrenaline rush, right? You can do almost anything in adrenaline. So with that said, the first time you watched it, did you know what you were getting yourself into, or did you just go like, oh, let's see what this goes, and then just walk away like, holy crap, that was incredible?
No, yeah, I mean, I just knew it, for, like I said, I was talking earlier, as a reference from Fred, so I was like, okay, it's a cool action movie, let's check it out. And yeah, so no, I wasn't expecting it to be anything crazy. I just thought, okay, cool, I mean, the characters and friends like it, let me check it out. That's really the only expectation I went in with.
So let's start talking about the movie. I actually forgot to get my notes, so let me grab my phone over here, because I have like notes upon notes upon notes. Ooh. And I usually like to follow along with the synopsis of the movie, right? And you kind of just go along. But funny enough, my notes are a lot shorter for this movie than everything I've covered so far, only because I want to say like 45 minutes in, I was so engrossed in the story that I was like, I'm just going to stop taking notes and I'm just going to enjoy it. And then tomorrow when we record, I'm just going to talk about it. See if I forget any scenes, I'm sorry. But I got drawn in by the story, which at the end, that's what you want cinema to do, to draw you into the story. And I think 40 minutes in was when I think the second wave of bad guys dies, because they go in like 4 or 5 different waves. And I was like, I'm so into this right now. And it was, I think it was like right before he meets Hans for the first time, when Hans is like, has that fake accent or whatever. Okay, so we start with John McClane landing to visit his family for Christmas, which again, that as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, I see why the debate that this is a Christmas movie. And even the score is Christmas. Everything is Christmas. So I no longer want to hear people say that this isn't a Christmas movie. I'm in that camp now.
Yeah, and actually, the very first scene kind of plays into the whole making John McClane kind of different because he starts you can see a white knuckle grip on the chair. You can tell he's afraid of flying. So it's just right off the bat, your hero is afraid of something, which isn't typical for like an action movie of the time. You know,
Yeah.
They're supposed to be this greater than life, invincible guy who is not gonna be afraid of anything. Well, this guy, right off the bat, you can see his wedding ring, so you know he's a family man. He's just holding on tight, trying to keep his composure while he's flying. Yeah.
If you have any other stuff like that, please point it out, because again, it was my first time watching it, so I don't know the tiny little details that I may have missed. And that was what I loved in my conversation with Melanie. Like, we talked theories and everything. Like, I talked about the red being a thing in that movie, and later I found out that it was like the calling card of the ghost. Like, that means that there's a spirit around and stuff. So if you see anything, feel free to interrupt me and tell me about, like, oh, did you see this? Did you see this? I'm all for it. I love, that's again for the discussion for this, because I love seeing cinema evolve. And what's really funny was that I saw a lot of, like, I don't want to say modern stuff in an 88 movie, but I thought it was really funny seeing that this was a very different style from Sixth Sense, when Sixth Sense came out 11 years later. Like, I saw in Sixth Sense, we were still fading to black in scenes. I was like, we don't do that anymore. But in an 88 movie, we don't. Like, it just goes like from scene to scene, like establishing shots, and it's like, that's really interesting. So feel free to call anything out like that. I also laughed how, again, after figuring out what year it was, I asked Heather the second I saw him smoking in an airport. I was like, what year was this movie made?
Definitely pre 9/11 for
Because
sure.
that would not fly, no pun intended, at all. I mean, even then, I think it was even before that event happened. Like, I'm pretty sure like smoking was just not allowed in airports at all, because I mean that just messes with the electrical circuits and stuff like that. We know, we work in movie theaters, we know pretty well you don't smoke around electronics, because that'll just mess everything up. Then that's when he meets his limo driver Argyle, and I'm just gonna cut a little bit into this, but I have on this list 5 different times in different inflections, fucking Argyle, LOL. Dude, Argyle was probably one of the best parts of the entire movie, just because of how hilarious he was and his inclusion of the character. At first I was like, oh, he's just gonna be like really quick, but no, he just kept coming back in different levels, and I was like, this dude's hilarious. But right out of the gate, you know, he establishes himself as kind of like the comedic relief and everything, which was something I didn't expect out of this movie. This movie was kind of hilarious. Was that kind of something that people saw in action movies before, or was it just like, I'm gonna kill people and then, you know, have a badass line and hhopefully that'll like pop the crowd or whatever?
No, so this was that's something that they added later on when they got the director and the screenwriters to adapt the story that they had originally. It was gonna be a more straightforward action film, but they thought it was a little too bleak, and so they wanted to add that humor. And plus, they had gotten Bruce Willis, who up until this point wasn't really known as an action hero. He was known for this sitcom comedy show, so he was able to bring that kind of funny man to the action movie thing to it. So it was cool to see them, and it definitely, I feel, made it a lot more enjoyable. Just being able to get those moments of levity and then just be able to laugh with the character, make him a little more relatable.
What sitcoms was Bruce Willis in? Because again, I'm coming in from this, I just know him as an action hero and as an action movie guy and
This
stuff
was
like
his
that.
first action movie.
So what did he do before?
He was mostly doing like rom-coms and stuff, and he moonlighting, I think, was like a kind of comedy police procedural show. So he was just kind of a comedy guy, and so this was him breaking out of that typecast into what would become then his action hero typecast.
I love it. That's phenomenal, because I didn't know that about Bruce Willis. Again, like, I don't like do research on like the older actors, because I just know them as like, oh, these are like the big guys and everything, right? Funny enough, like the first time I remember seeing Bruce Willis, like I don't want to call it a core memory, but like the first time I saw Bruce Willis in theater, so to speak, was when Surrogates was about, because that was when I worked at Studio Movie Grill and I was a runner at that point, and I was just like, oh yeah, look, Surrogates, Bruce Willis, I know that guy, he's an actor, like he's an action guy, and etc. And again, I wasn't really into action movies, so I just kind of like blew it off or whatever. But I was now like that I'm going back and I'm like really appreciating the art that came before and everything. It's really funny to know that was his typecast. He was a rom, and I love rom-coms too. So I'm like, how I did not know this, I don't know, but we're learning little by little. So he gets in the limo with Argyle. That's where he introduces himself, and that's when he talks about being a New York cop. And that's kind of where we get a little bit of his background to kind of understand why he left. Because his wife got a job in Los Angeles, and that's why she took the kids, because it was a good paying job, and he had to go tie his loose ends in New York and everything, and that's why he had to stay over there. She moved to LA, and we start finding out about a little bit of the relationship between the two. The kids don't understand that they're separated, because they're not even divorced, they're just separated because of distance. And we find out that the wife went back to her maiden name, which again kind of starts the fight between them two whenever they meet back up in the office and stuff, to establish that they're. I like how it's never explicitly said that like they're completely divorced or there was like any rift other than career choices, which is really cool because normally with a movie like this, you always see like the clear dissension between the characters to where the director or the writers are trying to make you pick a side, which I thought was really cool. And that's something that Heather also pointed out to me, that she really liked that the wife was never really seen like as a damsel in distress, so to speak, and she was a badass, which again for the 80s that's really cool to see as well. That equal representation and stuff. I have it written here in all caps, technology, because it was like all the old technology. I love seeing cassette tapes, VHS tapes, the old CB radios, how you couldn't transmit anything with like the gigantic antenna and stuff like that. So that was a really good nostalgic hit to the heart, because I mean I grew up with that technology. I still remember the multicolored tapes and everything back in the day and stuff. So during the opening credits as well, I forgot to note this, and you talked about it earlier too, how was the writing and stuff, right? I didn't know this was a book before. Do you know anything about the book?
Not a whole lot, but it's also one of those like loosely things. I'm not sure that it's a super close adaptation. So I think originally it was a John Sinatra movie, and that got turned into this movie. He was originally scheduled to play this. Well, he had the offer. He was forced to have the first offer because he had done the original movie. So when they were making this film, he got the first pick to be in the movie. He was 70 years old at this point, so he said no. Yeah. But yeah, so as far as the book, I've never actually read it.
I know you're a big book guy, so I was like, I wonder if he's read the book or if he knows anything about it. So the fact that it was a book actually like kind of like got my attention. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Because nowadays we see like all the different adaptations that get made into movies and everything, and I love that this has gone back even to the 80s. That there's been books that people have adapted, and they're like, hey, let's make this into a movie and stuff like that, and loosely based on everything. I think that's really cool to see that it even goes further back than that and everything. Okay, so I find out it's a book. I like how a touchscreen is still visible here in the 80s, and that's at the time I feel like that's like such insanely advanced technology, where now we just have it everywhere. Like my phone's touchscreen, my laptop's a touchscreen, everything. Like my video games are even a touchscreen, and I just find that fascinating that they're like, yeah, like this will do everything for you. Just like click the name whenever he gets to the tower and everything for the security guard and whatnot. Let me see. So right after that, John arrives in the building, and then that is when he goes upstairs, and then the wife is kind of introducing him to everybody. He goes upstairs. He meets Nakatomi, Tagaki. That's his name. The guy that owns the business, or one of the leaders of the business. And then he is showing him around, and that's when they run into Ellis in the office. And me and Heather both laughed. It's like, oh, this is just doing cocaine, just like nothing. Typical 80s. But I didn't realize just how Ellis was going to be kind of like a big part of the story too later on, because I just thought, again, I thought he was just like Argyle. He was just another character that was going to be there. So we just see Argyle in the office, or not Argyle, Ellis in the office, and then that's when the wife arrives into the room, and that's where they start having their conversation about the last name and whatnot, or at least John notices that the last name is not McLean, but I think I missed something here. There may have been the mom's phone call to the kids. I like that they also established again like that the kids weren't aware that they were separated or anything like that. They're just like, when is he coming home and stuff like that, and start creating that dissension of like, oh, John's not going to show up for Christmas, et cetera, but then he does end up showing up, which again, like you said, he's a family man, he's married and all stuff like that. And again, I like seeing that from an 80s perspective as well. So another note that I wrote here, this is an 80s movie. So I don't know why my brain just thinks older movies are going to be shorter. So I was really shocked to see that this was a 2-hour movie rather than just like a 90-minute sprint. So was this something typical or was this like kind of like a breakthrough at the time? Because obviously now we're looking at 2025. Avatar is about to be 3 hours and 20 minutes. We just had Killers of the Flower Moon, which was 3 hours and 30 minutes. So was this something new for the time, or was it something that had already been established?
It definitely felt weird, because like while rewatching it now, I was also surprised that it was 2 hours. And I've seen this movie multiple times, and I just had never clocked that it was 2 hours. I've never felt like 2 hours, so I can't say, because a lot of the more popular action movies, or even just movies back then, definitely felt a lot more hour and a half max, and you kind of got your full story and you were set and good to go. But at least in this movie, it never felt like it wasted any time. Everything felt like it needed the time. That's why all these side characters felt a lot more prominent and impactful, just because we got to spend a little bit more time with each one. They weren't just, hey, here's a guy, you can forget about him, move on to the next scene.
Yeah, they're not just fodder. They're actual people that you kind of grow to care about in whatever facet, because like I think that's what just makes movies as a whole, like especially horror movies, because that's my favorite genre, more impactful. The reason Cabin in the Woods works so well is because you got to know the characters. The reason that more modern slashers work, Hard Eyes, I loved Hard Eyes because everything was more impactful because you got to know the characters and such, so the reason the newer Friday the 13th was a little bit better than the old ones, I feel, is because you got to know the characters. And that might be a hot take, I don't know, but apparently I'm not alone in that. But it's Clown in the Cornfield is another one that I want to shout out for having really good, I think well-written characters that was really well done, and it got us to care about the characters when they do die. It's like, oh, okay, I guess they're just gone now. So I think that's really cool that they took the time to really flesh out the characters a little bit more, even if they're not the main characters, especially like the cop later on that ends up becoming friends with John. Does he come back in the sequel?
Briefly in the second one.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. That actually kind of makes me want to watch it too, because I really like their dynamic. I really like their dynamic. But anyways, so I really like the fact that they did flesh out these characters again to make stuff more impactful, because I feel like that just really makes it matter more when things do happen. Okay, so we have the conversation between I forget her name, the wife.
Holly?
Holly and John about, the last name and everything. And that's when basically shit hits the fan, because the tower gets locked down, and then she has to go answer a phone call, or she goes to a meeting because other business partners are calling, and then he's left alone in that room. And again, that's when shit hits the fan. That's when the Hans Gruber gang all arrives and everything. And you see every single person kind of already have their role in the, I'm going to call it the heist, and the security guards get taken away. We see the guy hacking all the stuff, and Theo, I think that was his name, he's the one starting to hack all the stuff, and their goal is to go in and steal $600 million from this business. And I may have missed it. I don't know what their motive was, other than just, trying to steal money and whatnot. But that's when we first get introduced to Hans Gruber, which I popped because I knew it was Alan Rickman, but just seeing him again, like just, be an evil guy and everything, I was like, that's Snape.
This is his theatrical debut.
Oh, movie. Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you know what he used to do beforehand?
A lot of stage acting. So this was his first feature film debuting, and it's one of the greatest villains of all time. What a way to start.
Yeah, no, for real. I mean, I knew him as Snape. That was my first introduction to Alan Rickman. Obviously, he would go on to do a lot of other great things after Die Hard and, after Harry Potter and before Harry Potter and everything. But just to see him like this, and I've always heard the name Hans Gruber, but I had no idea what he would look like or anything. And then to see that it was Alan Rickman, I was like, I expected for somebody to be like above him, kind of like Dolph Lundgren, like massive type or whatever. But to attach such a legendary action name to Alan Rickman, I thought was really cool as well, because again, I didn't know what the character looked like. I don't know who he was supposed to be played as or anything, so just having that revelation I thought was really, really cool. So I also didn't expect him to be so malicious, because again, I know him as Snape. That's like the back of my brain. I'm just continuing to see Snape, so I had to separate that after a second. But to see him be as evil as he was, even when he was like negotiating later with with Holly and everything, just see him be this, I don't want to call it manifestation of evil, because I think that's going a little too far in explaining his character. Just being so driven to accomplish his goal and doing anything to reach it was fantastic. Even his dynamic with John as the antagonist to everything that's going on, I thought was really cool as an action hero bad guy, because normally I feel it's like, I'm just gonna do this because I want money, but he had his motivations to want to do everything and whatnot. So I just thought it was really cool, like a really, like you said, well thought out written character to do everything.
He also works really well as a foil for John, just because where John McClane is this every guy, and he's just this, John McClane doesn't even get to dress up for the party. He's just in his tank top and pants.
And with no shoes!
And,
the entire time!
And when you compare it to Alan Rickman's character, Hans Gruber, he's this well-dressed, well-educated man with, this insane drive. So that you're having this everyman guy facing off this classically educated, driven supervillain. So you're just a great way to juxtapose those characters.
I like the fact that you call him a supervillain because I think that's like spot on. He is like a real life supervillain, and you're just one of those dastardly people that you see in action movies, but like in a more real life setting rather than just like the extravagance of like a Marvel or a DC or something.
And actually, since you point out the shoe thing, I do like how this movie, when it does little callback things, like it sets up early so you know that it makes sense later on for him to have through that hardship, like at the airplanes, like you got to put your feet into fists when you're good to the hotel. So then that's why he doesn't have shoes on. And Holly, you see him look at Holly's name is Holly Gennaro, so that later on in the movie, Holly can pretend to not be Holly McLean.
Yeah.
So all these little setups for that payoff later is just a good time.
That's really good writing. I didn't even put the feet thing together until later. The one thing that I did immediately go like, oh no, and we're skipping a little bit more forward, was after the shootout happens, after Hans and McClane meet each other for the first time face to face, was when they were just shooting at each other, and then Hans is like, shoot the glass. As soon as he said that, I was like, oh fuck, he's gonna mess with his feet, and like that just made me wince immediately. Like later on, like we see what happens and whatnot, but like I like the fact that they made him a smart villain rather than just like, oh, you're gonna get caught by brute force and stuff like that, right? Like you said, educated, right? So I really like that, again, from the presentation standpoint of like, this is the bad guy and stuff. No, it's just fantastic writing.
And also just the fact how both John McClane and Hans Gruber were so excelled at being able to improvise. Neither of their plans are going according to plan. They kept foiling each other, and then both of them having to, in return, audible and adjust to how they're going to continue their plan. So, like Hans Gruber was thinking on his feet, shoot the glass, make it harder for him. Nothing went to his plan, so he was constantly thinking up, okay, what do I need to do next? John McClane the same way. It's like, okay, I start off with all these gear. I'm slowly losing my gear. Okay, what can I do now that I have less stuff? Oh, yeah.
That's just fantastic writing as a whole, for not just the script but also just the entirety of like the fight, the back and forth, right? Because it wasn't just like a one clear thing for John to go in there and destroy everything, like, or to save everybody. He struggled, and then Hans struggled, and then John struggled, and so it was like a tug of war between the two sides, like trying to get one up on the other, until ultimately John wins, even with all the police outside. Was just like, nah. It was basically like a battle of wits and stamina between the two sides, which was just phenomenal as a whole. Okay, so one thing I laughed at, and I hope it makes you laugh too, the first German guy that you see cutting the wires with like the bomb and getting the codes and whatnot, I laughed because as soon as I saw him, like, this is German Evan Peters, dude. He literally looks like Evan Peters from American Horror Story, or Quicksilver. You might, yeah. So I was like, that literally looks like him, and I was like, if they ever remake Die Hard, they have to cast Evan Peters as this one guy. He would probably have to get a little taller and a little buffer just to pull off the role and whatnot. But I immediately just saw Evan Peters, and I was like, I wanted to remake them now. Or I don't know if I wanted to remake this movie, because I feel like remakes are a big thing now, and I don't know if you would be able to capture the magic unless you change some stuff, right? Because I mean, from everything that I'm hearing so far, I feel like this was just kind of like lightning in a bottle. Because I've obviously heard that the sequels aren't as good. Because I mean, you can only have one Die Hard, to start things out and whatnot. So I don't know, like, how I would feel. I'm gonna throw that question to you. How would you feel if they ever remade this movie?
Oh, I would hate that, especially with Bruce Willis and his health issues that he's going on through now. If you were to pass, I'm sure he's gonna pass, unfortunately, pretty soon. I just feel like it would kind of be a cash grab and taking advantage of his legacy, and it'd be not great. I would hate it. This is a perfect film that was of its time and so definitive for what it was doing, that to try to remake it would feel just like a cash grab trying to take advantage of this great actor who has passed, or will have passed by then.
So what if it is remade, and what if it ends up being really good? Like, obviously not better, because I don't think you're gonna get better than this, but what if it ends up being on like the same scale? Would you still feel the same way?
Yeah,
if it's done justice, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I struggle to see how I would be able to do justice to it, but if somehow they did it, I'd love to be proven wrong, but just I don't see it. I feel like a lot of media nowadays, when they're remaking stuff, feels very soulless, especially like so I'm not a big fan of the live-action Disney stuff, because it just feels like taking away a lot of the magic that the first ones have. Like, It might be fine movies, but it's not adding anything new or different to what was already a fantastic story. oftentimes taking stuff away from it. So
I think it's funny that you mentioned the live action Disney's, because funny enough, I saw the Moana trailer, and I'm not a Moana fan. I'm just not, and I'm sorry if that gets anybody upset out there. But the trailer, the new one, I saw the side by side comparison to the animated one, and I just feel like the colors feel so muted compared to the animated. And obviously you're not going to be able to replicate, the brightness of it and whatnot, and that's fine. That's one thing. But I just feel like, just going off of, again, just the first impression of the trailer, I just feel the colors feel so muted, and I don't know how that's going to fare for the movie, especially since later on, like, the living island or whatever, that's going to be a very important part. And if they just make it dark and gritty and stuff, I'm like, I don't know. The only live action Disney that I've liked so far is Beauty and the Beast. That's it. I was not a fan of Sleeping Beauty. Was that one? No. The Seven Dwarfs one.
Snow White.
Snow White. There you go. That's the one. I hated the fact that Derpy talked. I get that it made sense within the scope of the movie and everything, but I was not a fan. Did you watch that one?
I did not.
Good. Let's keep it that way. No, I'm kidding. I did like Lilo and Stitch, though. I feel it kind of lost the heart of the original, and I feel that's a very common take. But I thought as a standalone movie, it was fine. The ending was cool. I really liked the ending. It was different than the original, of course. But I don't know. Maybe I just need to go back and rewatch it. The animated one, because I haven't seen the animated one in a while. But anyways, okay, so remakes. We got a little bit off track then. I apologize. But so the takeover of the building was immediate, like absolutely immediate. Like there was, like you said, they had a plan. They go in, they shut down, they do the secret, the barriers and everything, so nobody can get in. And the only way you can get in is through the front door and going through the emergency guard, which was replaced by somebody from their own group and stuff. And this is where we see that Argyle is stuck in the parking lot because he was waiting for John to call and be like, oh, if it goes wrong, I'll just take you back and whatnot and stuff. And this was the first fucking Argyle that I wrote on here, because he's just chilling in his car, just listening to music, not realizing what the hell is going on around him. And I really like the fact that the shutdown really paints you the picture of this. Nobody knows what's going on. You won't even know anything's going on in that building unless you're there, unless you're like amongst the 30 hostages and stuff. And this is actually a funny criticism that I had for people that said that they didn't like the black phone, because I don't know if you've seen this or not, because I don't know how in tune with social media you are, but a lot of people were like, why didn't that kid just yell and just get out? And I was like, you realize they literally showed a scene of him like saying stuff, and they go out of the window that's at the top and they say that it's soundproof, and then as soon as you go out the window, like, you can't hear anything, right? And apparently that was super divisive, because we were like, that kid's dumb, he should have done this. I was like, nobody can hear him, dude. But anyways, so I really like how it establishes again the fact that unless you were there, you would not even know what thing's going on. Even when the cop checks on the building later, he doesn't know anything's happening until they start shooting at his car. So again, it keeps all the action and the entire plot just contained to this one building, which again, I feel just adds to the claustrophobia of like something's about to go down between John and everybody else, because John's the only one that they're not even aware about, and he doesn't even give them a name later on when they start communicating through the radios and stuff. And that's what I noted right here. Bro is barefoot. That's literally what I wrote. Because I didn't know that it was going to play a factor later on. But the reason it caught my attention was because I have a Hispanic mother. I can remember when I was little, she's like, put on socks, you're going to get sick. And I was like, that anytime I see anybody barefoot, that's the first thing I think of. I just think of my mom. Is like, you need to put on socks, you're going to get the flu. And I'm like, that's not how it works, but okay. So again, we immediately see the fact that John even only has one small handgun, and that's it. That's literally the only weapon he has. So it's just him, one handgun, his NYPD knowledge versus I think like 12 different European guys that have like machine guns. They have machine guns, they've got C4, they've got like a whole plethora of weapons and everything. So the fact that that's John's challenge, again, just the juxtaposition of the two is incredible to see, which at the end of obviously John wins and stuff. But it's a really cool just dynamic as a whole as well. Let's see. Oh yeah, Hans also. I wrote here. Hans does not fuck around. Like he immediately just starts with Takagi when he takes him up to the room and everything's like, "Give us the code," and Takagi's like, "No, I'm not going to give you anything." And it's like normally you see it's like 1, 2, 3. Okay, no, I'm not gonna do this. Or oh, I'm gonna give you the code. And he counts to 3 and he shoots the motherfucker in the head. Like nothing's like. Whoa! All right, cool. So that's that to me as a first time viewer. I immediately saw, I was like, okay, so this guy actually like sucks. He's evil. Holy shit. We're I guess at this time frame, like in the 80s and stuff, since you've seen more action movies than I have, at this time were villains kind of painted that way, or were there some like merciful villains out there, like to kind of put it in a gauge of where Hans stood?
So I think what this movie does differently from a lot of that stuff is that it's a lot more realistic. And you were mentioning kind of like the violence in films. The 80s were big on that. Like there were 100 different kills in an action movie that seemed very inconsequential. That was just racking up a body count. Where in this one, all the kills, because there were so few people involved, you couldn't get that body count. So every kill felt a lot more impactful. And I think that's where the difference was. This felt a lot more realistic. It wasn't just cartoonish violence. It was with a point. And so when he kills his character, it sets the expectation that death is possible, and it's not something you can brush off. It's just going to suck. It's watching that happen, and you can feel the legitimacy of the villains at that point, because it's not just cartoonish again. It's very real. The stakes feel more intense because there's so few people, and every death is going to feel a lot more impactful that way.
I like the way that you put that cartoonish violence. Like I didn't think about that either for the older action movies stuff, like the older Predator. That's another movie also that I watched recently, Predator Badlands. And the reason I was able to disconnect from it was because again, it was this Yautja from like space or whatever going against robots and whatnot. I was like, oh, that's a violent movie because there's some violent kills in it, but they're not people, so I'm able to disconnect from it and whatnot. But yeah, no, like thinking about that, like I obviously I've seen like YouTube videos or whatnot, people talking about the Rambos and Predators and whatnot, and Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone and stuff. And you're right, like I feel like it's also kind of why I kind of just never really took to it. Which, funny enough, as a wrestling fan, I was like, cartoonish violence, nah. But yeah, no, I think that's very actually really well put. The cartoonish violence, like it didn't feel cartoonish, like you said. It felt like they're not just fodder; they're real people. Even like you said, the side characters like Takagi, we didn't get to spend too much time with him, but we knew he was important. The pregnant lady eventually comes into play later on too, because I mean, like that's one of the quote unquote bargaining chips that Holly uses to get to Hans' sympathy and everything. And I feel like it's not the only time we see Hans really show sympathy. And it just shows that at the end of the day, yeah, he's a bad guy, but he's not an absolute like psychopath, if you will, which again it's great to see, to show like the gray area of morality for the character and stuff. So let's see what happens after this. So this is where the everything starts, like all the action and everything begins. We see John start going through each level to find out where they're at and everything, and then Hans, again, still no idea that anybody's in the building, and he starts going up and down the stairs. John does, and he sees that I forget, like 2-3 floors up, he sees them already like start to lock down the building to make sure that there's nobody there and stuff. And then that's when he gets into the first scuffle with somebody, and I think 2 people die at that point. And that's where Hans's operation starts falling apart, because John pulls the alarm on floor 31, and then that's what alerts the cops to come by. And that's, again, the first sign that somebody else is in the building, and that's where the conflict begins. And I really like the buildup of the conflict. It wasn't just like, oh, look, I found you, anything like that. It was the kind of like cat and mouse game of trying to find out where John was, what his purpose was, if he was part of the initial hostages that got away or something like that, or if it was just somebody else. So...
And actually, in that first fight, that's when we start seeing like his the gear that John McClane has be a lot more important to the movie, because that's when he gets his radio.
Yeah.
And he attempts to get shoes, but he's like, several million terrorists in the world, and I got one with smaller feet than my sister, so he couldn't even wear shoes anymore. But he got a machine gun, which brings us to the that famous "now I have a machine gun" scene.
Yeah. Then you're right. That's where he gets the radio, and I think that's where he starts listening in. I don't know if they start talking yet between him and Hans or whatnot, but we see the cops arrive to the building, and then they turn around whenever John is looking out the window, and that's when he gets into a second scuffle after the elevator. That's where he goes down the elevator. Is like, ho ho ho! Now I have a machine gun. That's where that was.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because Heather pointed out to me, "It's like, I want a sweater that says ho ho ho, and I have a machine gun." I was like, let me see if I can get that for her. I'm too broke right now, but maybe in the future we'll work something out. So yeah, and so that's when Hans really knows that there's somebody in the building, and then the cops turn around, and that's when there's a second scuffle upstairs, with another dude, the brother of, I think it was the brother of Carl, and that's where John wins again because he has the machine gun now, and then he gets a second bag, and this is the one with C4, and those were going to be the ones that detonate the roof. For later on, we get more little bit of story on that, and this is where kind of Carl goes a little, like, he starts showing signs of wanting to go rogue because he doesn't want to listen to Hans anymore because he's been doing it his way for the operation. But I mean, if your brother got killed, obviously you're going to be emotional, so that makes absolute sense why he kind of starts diverting from the plan and whatnot. And then I think John goes up to the roof to try and communicate with somebody through the radio to try and get help because the other cops turned around. And this is when I realized that the movie was funnier than I thought, because as soon as like he gets through to somebody on the other line, is like I forget what the cops ask, the people ask, is like, this is a private line, how did you get a hold of this, or something like that. And it's like, to order a fucking pizza, what do you think? And I don't know why that line just fucking killed me. I was like, okay, so this movie's gonna be funny, or at least have some funny memorable lines and whatnot. And I just really like the familiarity to it, like just the funniness of it, right? And I feel like that's kind of like, I don't want to call it the birth of like action comedy or whatnot, but it really had like the comedic tones to kind of ease the tension in a little bit, to again show you that he's an everyday man. He's not like just like a super tough, I'm gonna bulldoze through every single wall that I see type of person and stuff. So then after that, that's where they get a hold of dispatch to send that cop to go check on the building. And then the cop was literally on his way about to go home to be off the shift and everything, and boy oh boy does he take the wrong call. So he takes the call to go to dispatch, and then this is again where another fight breaks out in the building, and the fight breaks out in the roof, because Hans immediately figures out, is like, where would you get the best transmission with one of these radios? The roof. Boom, everybody starts going to the roof. A firefight breaks out, but again, you can't see it, you just see flashes of lights. And so I mean, if you were to see a building that big and you see flashes of lights, you would assume it's the lights to get the planes and whatnot. And so the fight happens, and John ends up getting a body somehow, and then he just throws it off the window to try and get in the car, and because the cop was already driving away. So I can't even okay, the scariest thing that has ever happened to me in my car were two different things, right? I had a flat tire literally explode in the middle of 290 on me. That's a freeway here in Houston, by the way, for those listening. And I immediately had to pull over to the side when the inside of the tire, or the inside of the wheel, was scraping against the 45, so it was like sparks everywhere. And the second scariest thing that's ever happened to me in my car was last week, when my car literally broke down in the middle of 45. That's another freeway here in Houston, ladies and gentlemen. And it was because my alternator went out. So I could not imagine the fear in this man's life to just have a dead body dropped on your car. I'm just curious, how would you respond if that happened to you?
Not well. I think the panic that he went through is pretty great. And then immediately he started to get shot at by the guys inside. And on top of that, no, that'd be a lot, especially because we later find out that he's not even a field cop anymore. He's a desk guy because of a different death that happened in his career. Yeah. So adding all that, I'd also try to run, get back up and see what happens there. And
I also really, really like that his story as a whole, because you find out why he doesn't have why he doesn't have a gun and everything, and why, like you say, he's a desk cop and stuff like that. So that was a really cool little side story that kind of comes full circle at the end as well. Okay, so then that's when all the cops start flooding the building and everything. So we get the full force come out, and then we see the top cop of LAPD come out, and he's kind of a jerk. I feel like that was kind of the point. He was kind of like the bully that got power, and all of a sudden he could bully other people. But as soon as somebody above him is like, "Oh no, I'm gonna be a good little soldier," and just do all that stuff. I like this dynamic. Which, by the way, I'm curious because I didn't actually research this. Is this the same actor that is the guy from The Breakfast Club?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought. I was like, he looks so familiar. Which, by the way, I have seen The Breakfast Club, so we're not going to cover that on the show. Maybe in the future. But yeah, so I really liked him. I feel like he serves the same purpose in that movie that he does in here. Again, like that bully that's just gonna push people that are down and everything and whatnot. But
I'm actually so I think one of the biggest criticism this movie gets is the way the incompetent aspect of both this guy and then later the FBI's, where it just seems almost in a movie that's otherwise trying to be very grounded and realistic, this feels very cartoonish, where like they're so inept and incompetent, where you're just like, okay, feels kind of silly.
Yeah. No, I agree actually, because I also kind of agree with that too, because the FBI and the outside cop kind of just like, I don't want to say took me out of it or ruined it for me, because I still had a really, really fun time. But I felt like had it just stayed between Al and John, that would have been perfect, because like their dynamic was sensational. Like their chemistry without even seeing each other was fantastic. For lack of a better explanation, it's as if you made an online friend, right? Because I have plenty of online friends. I've never met them, I've never seen their face, but they're cool people and we have good chats, and that's kind of what it felt like. And obviously the internet wasn't around in the 80s and stuff, or at least not in the form that it is now. So to have that kind of connection with somebody through unfortunate means, I just think is really cool that, they created a relationship like that, to where at the end, without even like the moment they lock eyes, they know who each one is, and they just give each other a hug. It's like, hell yeah.
Sweet moment.
Yeah, no, I love that for sure. Okay, so the first cop arrives, and then he tells him that his name is Roy, because he doesn't want to give Hans his name, which is a smart idea, because then obviously he doesn't know that Holly hasn't given her name. So, because if that had happened, things would have ended much, much differently. And I think this is when Holly steps up, and she's going to be kind of like the mediator between the hostages and Hans and everything. So Holly shows her backbone in the entire situation, which is fantastic. Again, not the damsel in distress by any means. And then I think this is kind of where I cut my notes off, because I was like, I'm enjoying this movie way too much. And yeah, okay, so yeah, that is literally okay, so I'm gonna show you this, because this is literally where my note ends. This fucking movie rules, dude. That's literally what I wrote before. My notes are just like, I'm just gonna ignore this completely, because I'm not gonna take notes. I'm just gonna enjoy the ride, see how much I remember, and I'll figure it out tomorrow when we record. Okay, so that's where basically I don't want to call it the climax yet, because we still have like an hour to go in the movie and stuff, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna rush through it as we're talking about it and stuff. So the conflict continues. The cops start arriving on the outside. The tension starts building. Holly becomes the mediator, and then Carl starts kind of going into his own little side mission for revenge for his brother and stuff, while Hans is like trying to calm him down. It's like, yo, dude, like chill, like we're gonna take care of it, like he's not gonna walk out of here alive, like we're gonna make sure that we got our money and everything gets taken care of. And then we get glimpses throughout the movie of Theo slowly breaking down the codes for the safe and everything, where we're led to believe that there's $600 million in the vault or whatever that they're trying to break into.
Actually, so while we're mentioning the Carl thing, this is also another fun parallel, because at the same time, John McClane thinks he's going to get help from the LAPD. It's just making things worse.
Yeah.
And same thing for Hans. He thinks he has this reliable guy, but he's going off there else. It's making his plan worse. So this is another thing that they both have to deal with, where they thought they were going to have this thing in their pocket to help them out. It's just making their jobs that much harder, while dealing with the other person that are actually trying to fight.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I'm loving the fact you're giving me like more reason to appreciate the movie, because again, I'm just coming at it from a story standpoint, but something I really love about movies is that when you rewatch it and you start paying attention to themes that you didn't catch on to at first, they just become even more sensational. For example, my favorite horror movie of all time would probably have to be, or one of, I shouldn't say my actual favorite. It's Hereditary. The first time you watch it, I think it's terrifying, and it's just such a good story. But when you come back and rewatch it, all the details were there the entire time before the climax. And I was like, holy crap, it was there the whole time. And I've seen the movie 3 times now, and I remember like being super terrified after the first time. I was like, I'm never rewatching that. I loved it, but I'm never rewatching it. And then I rewatched it with some of my friends, and they're like, this is what you hyped up? I don't know. And I loved seeing all the little details and everything. And the third time I rewatched it, I just rewatched it by myself, and I was like, this was sensational. Like, I love this movie. So again, I love the fact that you're pointing out those parallels too, because like now eventually, because I know Heather's probably gonna make me rewatch it again, I'll be down for it, because before I'm like, I don't know. But now that I've seen it, I was like, okay, I get the hype now. I'm gonna pay attention to like all those little things that, you know, like you said, the parallels and stuff, because that's really cool actually. Like, you know, they both did have help that didn't end up actually being help. If anything, it ended up being a detriment to their ultimate goal and stuff. Okay, so Carl's getting revenge, and I think this is where we see the fight upstairs in the room where Takagi got killed, if I'm not mistaken. And then Ellis tries to stand up and be smart about things, but he ends up not being smart about things at the end of the day. Maybe I misunderstood the entire point of what he was trying to do, but what was he trying to do?
I mean, I think it's just the difference in the characters. This is just like a sleazy business guy. He has this one way of, he thinks the way the world works, where John sees how it actually works because he's been through it. So, I mean, it's just a misunderstanding of how he thinks things are going to work. He says to him, and this is just a different form of business talk, it's not, it's life or death, and he is just not able to grasp that. So he's handling it with the same kind of nonchalance that you would have as an 80s business guy, and not realizing that your life is literally on the line. And that's what John is trying to get him to understand. It's like, hey, buddy, you don't want to be there. You don't want to do this. And
that's kind of also what I got out of it. So I guess I did understand that right. Thank God. Because sometimes I'm like, I feel like this is what I think. And then it's completely wrong. It's like, never mind. But no, some small detail that I really liked. And maybe I was just seeing things. I don't know if this is actually how it worked or not. But there's a shot after they shoot Ellis and he dies and stuff. There's a shot that they have from behind Ellis, like swings around Hans, who's sitting in the background of the shot and stuff, and you actually see the hole in Ellis's chest through the chair and everything, like slightly just as it goes through, and it shows Hans there. I was like, that's a really cool little detail that like again just shows that he's not coming back. Like Ellis did not survive this at all. And I just thought again that was a really really cool tiny like visual detail as a whole. Speaking of visual details, I like the fact that all the shots look brutal, like the gunshots and everything. It wasn't just like, oh, gunshot and then blood, and then, you know, like the blood will just like soak. Like, no, like the blood went flying through everything. And again, just to to kind of take it to now is like, if we see gunshots happen in movies now, sometimes it'll just be like, oh, a gunshot happens, and then, you know, you just see like the blood like slowly going out or something like that. You don't see like just like massive spurts of blood just go all over the place. And I feel like that's more real, having seen some stuff like, you know, like gun tests and stuff like that, or like gun ranges and stuff. I feel like that was more real than anything that we would see in movies nowadays. And again, just the way that everything just looked was fantastic. And for being an 80s movie, I think that was a really fantastic just performance from the behind the scenes people as well. And like, not just because I love going behind the scenes and learning about like how prosthetics are made and seeing how like specific shots are. And I actually started loving this side of movie making after watching Dead Meat a lot, because Dead Meat shows a lot of like behind the scenes stuff on how like specific kills are made and whatnot. So I just thought that was really cool, like seeing the full production. I kind of want to go see like behind the scenes, like how was this made, how was this shot, obviously like wires, stunts and all that stuff and whatnot, but the prosthetics, the way that they just like click a button and everything blows up to make it look real and stuff. Is there anything available like that for this movie that you're aware of?
I'm sure there is. I'm not sure that I've seen it, but I know a lot of it was like miniature work, and the people who were in charge of the effects were the people who did Ghostbusters.
Nice. So. That's another one I need to see as well. So I'm adding. I was literally thinking 2 days ago, I was like, I should watch Ghostbusters, because I've never seen I've never seen any Ghostbusters, as a matter of fact. I just know, again, the pop culture aspect of it. Like I know the main references and stuff and whatnot. But I'm gonna go look that up, and I'll probably send that to you. They're like, hey, look, here's how they made the movie, because I find that stuff fascinating. Okay, so back to the plot. So we see the fight happen in the room where they killed Takagi. We know Ellis is dead, and then I think this is where he meets Hans for the first time. because I think Hans does something to go. I forget what he was trying to go do, but he meets Hans, and then Hans has a fake accent that's not him, and then he says that his name is Clay something. I forget what it was, and that's when John knows immediately he's lying, because right next to him, the directory says Clay W, not Clay A or B. I forget what it was, and that's obviously when he knows he's bullshitting him and everything. Gives him a gun, no bullets. As soon as he gave him the gun, I was like, that's got no bullets. Like, bro, like he's smarter than that. There's no way there's bullets in there. And that's where we kind of see the first face off between these two characters, which is really cool. Again, it just goes to show how smart and adaptive John McClane is, because again, he could have just trusted the guy, but it's like, dog, like, I'm in danger, I'm not. And it shows his cop skills, so to speak, like being able to deduce that there's something wrong. And again, it also shows that Hans was not going to get caught immediately, and shows his own like mental prowess as well to not, to not slip up. Even when he got given the gun, I was like, I'm pretty sure he knows that has no bullets, but it doesn't hurt to at least try to see maybe like he messed up or something. But yeah, then we have that first showdown between them two, and that's where the fight happens, where Hans tells, I think it was Carl, it's like, shoot the glass. And again, I just winced as soon as I was like, I know exactly why he's doing that. And it was really funny too, because earlier in the movie, I told Heather, I was like, why wouldn't he just shoot the window to shoot at the car to make it pretend like, oh, there is somebody up here? And then Heather was like, maybe he's trying to conserve bullets. I was like, fuck, you're right. No, that's a great point. You're right. And again, there's these little moments here and there that if I were to question it, I'm pretty sure there's a logical reason behind it, outside of the FBI and the that other bully cop and whatnot, that like kind of like really explains why the characters make the decisions that they did to make sure that they stay alive, because this is a pretty scary situation to be in, like a hostage situation. So that scuffle happens, and then I'm trying to remember what happened after this fight. John is getting the glass out of his feet because they kind of get separated and they go their own ways. Hans trying to make sure that the vault is unlocked, and then John contacts Al, and as he's taking the glass out of his feet, that's when we find out Al's story, where he's a desk cop because he unfortunately shot a kid, and he told himself, I'm never picking up a gun after this. And I think that death to Al really adds a lot, especially since we knew that he was about to be off work to go be with his family, which again, just a fantastic little performance here from these two. Emotional performance where again, they didn't even see each other, so just to be that vulnerable in a situation like that is just fantastic, especially when you've got the other cop guy in your ears like, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to handle hostage situations. Like, all right, bro, sure, whatever. So then after that scene, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this is where Hans figures out that they're married, because he sees that she looked at the picture, but he doesn't ever pull it up until later. I think the scene right after that follows.
Oh yeah, because this is where we're starting to get more of that news guy.
Yeah,
and he's the one who kind of screws it over for them by interviewing the kids.
I totally forgot about the news guy. Yeah, because that's his own little side plot as well. Because he just wants to be out on the field, and he's just like everybody else is busy, and there's nobody else available. It's like, yeah, take truck 5, and then you're right. You're absolutely right. I totally forgot about the little side plot. Also, fuck him for being fucking racist. But it was the 80s. Whatever. I'll allow it. That's one of the. It's really funny when like watching old movies. I was like, I just have to remember, I'm watching old movies. Just let it go. Not what it is. What it is. They would have to take that out in the remake, by the way. But yeah, no. Fuck him for being
it's pretty
racist.
Topical. I feel like they could probably keep it in, just like threatening to call immigration on them. Yeah,
True. Absolutely. Yeah. Anyways, so after that, let's see what happens after that. I think, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's when Hans finally pulls up the picture, because he does see that news report on the TV, and then he sees John in the picture, because now he knows what he looks like. Now he has his face. We totally missed the scene where the cop gives away that his name's John McClane, because it's on a call that happens over the radio. Like somebody says that he's a cop with NYPD.
Oh yeah.
And it was earlier. it may have been during the glass shard scene, but somehow, somewhere, somebody says that his name's John McClane. He's an NYPD officer, and that's when Al stops calling him Roy, and that's when all the blocks kind of start falling and whatnot. So then after that, which, by the way, as I'm thinking about this whole movie, all I'm hearing is just the score, which is all Christmas music, which it just makes me think this is absolutely a Christmas movie. I'm going to keep fighting with people on Twitter about that now that I have a horse in this race. Okay, so then the glass shard happens. Al reveals why he's a desk cop. And this is kind of where we find out that Carl has gone completely rogue because Hans asked for insane demands, which were just random people to be let go from prison. And he didn't even know these people, right? Like, he just... No.
I mean, this is kind of also where we start to see more of his plan. You can tell that this is all just a big diversion where he's just here for the money, and he's willing to kill everyone else to make it look like he died in this event. All this is still going roughly to what he wants to happen, and yeah. Okay. So this is adding more fuel to that. They just think I'm a terrorist, and I'm gonna go out in a blaze of glory. They're not gonna notice that I'm failing. Okay,
cool. So I'm still following. Cool. So then the FBI is like, oh yeah, we're gonna pick up the people from the top part of the helipad that's on top of the building, and that's where John crawls up to the top, which, by the way, shouts out to Bruce Willis for going into all these different spaces through the elevator and whatnot, because we haven't even talked about that at all. We've just been saying, oh yeah, he's in this floor. The fact that he had to maneuver his way to these floors after they found him in the building, not even able to take stairs, was amazing to see. Like, just again, the ability to be able to do such things as an everyday man and everything.
And also just being able to use like Nakatomi Plaza as another character in the movie, like just another obstacle for him to go through, like all the glass, all the vents, all the elevators. It all feels so a lot cooler just because the building feels important. It's not just a location that they happen to be in. It has its place in the story.
Yeah. And I always like it whenever the building is also a big thing, which, funny enough, as soon as you said that, I had a realization, and I'm going to rewatch this video and I'm going to see my face like, oh, that's right. A movie that I just now thought about that kind of has a building that feels like a character is The Belko Experiment. Have you seen that movie? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm gonna take a very quick diversion here. But the Belko Experiment is a horror movie where basically people show up to work, and there's like people on the outside that, like, I think either inject them or put something in the back of their neck, kind of like trackers. And the Belko Experiment is basically you're stuck in this workplace, and there's 100 people or 96 people or something, a random number, and every set time they're going to kill half of the people unless they manage to kill half the people.
Oh, right. That's not familiar.
Yeah. And then they lock the building down. Nobody can see anything. And so after like 3 hours, like 48 people die unless they kill 48 people. So they can either choose to kill people, or they can just let random chance take their lives and everything. So they're trying to kind of like incite the energy in people to, be like, we're going to be the ones that play God and stuff like that. So that's another movie that also, again, lockdown building, and then the building feels as its own character too, at least in my experience. I haven't seen it in a while, but that's kind of what it reminded me of as soon as you said that the Nakatomi building feels like its own character and everything. But anyways, I digress. So John goes up to the top, and then he sees all the C4 lying in the ceiling, and then that's when he realizes that Carl, again, has gone rogue. There's a double cross, right? And he tries to warn the cops to not land, but they're not listening because they're cops. They're FBI, and so they're like, no, we know better. It's fine. And then they try, and John tells all the people that were up there, the hostages, to go back down because then otherwise they're going to they're going to die because they're going to explode and everything. And luckily he managed to save a majority of them, if not all of them, because they go downstairs. And this is when he fights. That's actually when he fights Carl. That's where he kills Carl, and he hangs him up with the chain and everything. I thought that was a cool visual.
We didn't kill him, remember?
That's right. You're right. He does show up at the end, and he's all messed up and everything. So we're perceived to believe that he may have died. So then the explosion happens. I don't know if it gets in a helicopter or not, but I do know that they fly. It does get a helicopter.
Okay. FBI guys, because then the LAPD guys like, oh, we're gonna need more FBI guys. Which
okay.
also felt like really like those guys just died, bro.
Yeah. Okay. I totally missed that little thing then. Okay. So it gets the helicopter, and then this is where we start getting the last showdown between Hans and John, where basically one of them has to go. Like, that's just the way that it goes and everything. And then after the fight happens, then we see no, hold on, there was one more scene. John jumps. I don't know if this happened earlier, if it happens with this last C4 explosion, where he hangs on
with
the fire hose. Yeah,
that was the scene.
And then he repels himself down, and I thought that was a really cool shot, just as a whole, because normally we're very, at least I feel now, we're very conditioned to wait for that tense moment to happen, to where like they're almost about to fall off, but then they don't. I think they did a good job of not creating that kind of tension here, because we know that we want to see the showdown between Hans and John McClane. So they do it enough to where like he's panicking to get the fire hose off because it's about to fall and take him with him, take him with the force and stuff. And then he gets it off in time to where it's not like a scary, tense situation, everything. And then that's when we start getting down to he's gonna go get Hans, because I think everybody's gone by this time.
Yeah, and this is where we get like a good setup, just because he takes stock of where he's at. He realizes his machine gun has no bullets. He has 2 bullets for his handgun, and that's where he looks over to the tape and starts formulating the plan that he'll have to. Yeah,
no, I again, Christmas movie. It's wrapping paper and there's tape and everything, and he tapes the small handgun to his back, which I don't know. Was this the same handgun that he had at the beginning?
I don't even know. Might have been.
Okay, I'm gonna say that it was, because I just think thematically, I think that's really cool that it comes down to the first weapon that he had, and so he goes over to. He goes downstairs and he knows that they finally got the vault unlocked. All the money is kind of just strewn about. It goes everywhere, I think, because I see paper flying from this point.
Office paper, like they're getting like bonds.
Okay,
that's what they're like stealing.
Gotcha. So then. This is when Argyle also makes his presence felt, because then he intercepts Theo as he's leaving. And I thought that was really cool, because, again, we keep getting these shots of Argyle still being in the building until he hears the radio. It's like, hey, there's something on Nakatomi Plaza. It's like, oh, shit, that's where I'm at. And that's, when everything finally hits for him and everything. So shouts out to Argyle for probably being one of my favorite characters side characters in the movie.
This is another fucking Argyle moment in your notes.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. 100%, because I just liked Argyle, especially too, because my first instance of loving Argyle was the movie that came out 2 years ago, because a lot of people did not like that one.
Oh, that movie.
Yeah, a lot of people did not like it. I watched it because it had John Cena in it, but then I actually ended up really liking it. And funny enough, I've never seen a Kingsman movie either, so I'm eventually going to watch those too. And there's that series and Argyle are connected. I don't know if you. I didn't know that. Yeah, so that's the post-credit scene. Spoilers for everybody watching out there, even though I already said it. But yeah, so then we get the final showdown between Hans and John, where Hans knows that there's no more bullets or he tells him to drop the machine gun. He does, and then he just holds up his hands, and then that's when Hans is like, well, what are you gonna do, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's like, gun, done. And then they get into their scuffle, which doesn't kill Hans yet, but then they continue the fight to the point where it gets to the window, and that's where Hans is hanging on, and then he no longer can, and he just kind of falls off the building.
Yeah, this is one of the most iconic scenes in the movie, and the reaction of Alan Rickman is very real, because that was the first take they used for when they were filming, because they dropped him earlier than he was expecting. It's like, hey, we're gonna drop you on 3. They dropped him on like 1 or something, so he genuinely didn't realize that he was falling.
I hope he had stunt wires.
Yeah.
Okay. I was about to say, bro, if it's like the 80s, I don't think things were more dangerous back then. Absolutely not, dude.
But just the fear in his eyes is very real, because he did not expect to drop one. He did drop.
That's cool. I like that. Like, it sucks that they had to like jump scare him to do that, but I think that for the movie as a whole, I think it works really well. And then obviously we see him fall off the building, and everything seems to be all happy dandy. The movie's starting to wrap up. They're gonna go see the kids for Christmas, but then Carl makes his final appearance, and that's when the Al story comes full circle, when he pulls out his gun, or pulls out a gun, and then he's the one to kill Carl at the end. Which again, I did not expect that at all, for that little side piece of story to come back like that. And again, just for him to find that courage to be able to, say like, I got to defend my friends and stuff like that. I thought that was a really cool story. And I think Argyle and Al were probably my two favorite characters, side characters out of the entire movie.
And they gave Al the last kill in an action movie, which is usually the big good guy versus bad guy. That's the last kill of the movie.
Yeah.
That's where you get your last moment. But they gave him the last kill, which is always fun.
Hell yeah. So yeah, I think. And then after that, we see them, drive off. And
actually, now that you mentioned the paper, so that's very, especially with the Let It Snow, that gives like that image of snow falling from the building.
I like that. I really like that. So yeah, and then the McClanes go back home, and then
Not before she punches the reporter.
That's true. Very, very Gale Weathers of her.
She got to see. She saw that he was the one that gave up the plot, and
that's true. That's true.
Revenge.
That's true. I mean, well deserved. That guy was a jerk, anyways. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the entire movie. We managed to cover it here in a pretty good time, I feel. But yeah, dude, like after putting it off for damn near 20 plus years or so, I finally watched Die Hard, and I actually, as a matter of fact, I saved this for the end. I wanted to show you what I put on my Letterboxd, just so you could see what I thought of it, because I tend to log my stuff on Letterboxd immediately, which, by the way, if you guys want my Letterboxd, I might drop the link for you guys, but you will get spoilers about what I think on movies before I do record. So yeah, I gave it 4.5 stars on my Letterboxd. And those were my actual thoughts on the movie, like right out of the gate. So for those of you guys out there that aren't able to read this, they don't make movies like this anymore. I can't believe it took me this long to watch this, and what a great first write that was. That's literally what I put on there. But yeah, dude, like when I say that they don't make movies like this anymore, basically what I mean is like I feel there's just so many movies that exist just to exist, or to fill a quota, or not even send a message. They're just there, right? This wasn't even dumb fun either. Like it had a lot of heart behind the performances. It had a lot of heart behind the characters, and it's not what I expected from what my preconceived notion of what an action movie is. For example, I'll give you the perfect example of what I think an action movie is, and you might laugh at this. Red One. I saw that and I walked in because my staff at the time wanted to see it, and I was like, it's got The Rock and it's got Chris Evans. I'll enjoy it, sure. And then I watched it and I was like, that was fun. I turned my brain off and that was enjoyable. I actually really enjoyed that. But with this one, like, you can turn your brain off and enjoy it, but I feel like a lot of like the little nuances and the stuff that you've told me now, like the parallels and everything, it really drives the point of like, we need characters, we need stories, we need things to invest in, because that's what cinema is, to be able to invest in a character and then pull anybody watching to be able to relate to that stuff, even if you've never experienced it. For example, Long Walk is my favorite movie of the year so far, and that's because I related to it in a way that only I could, and I know that not everybody's gonna think that, and that's fine, but dude, Long Walk was my favorite movie of the year so far, and it's gonna be so hard in the last month to be able to topple that, even though we've got a lot of great movies coming out for the last 6 weeks here of the year. But yeah, no, this was a really fun ride, and while it may not be my favorite of all time, I can see why it's up there for a lot of people, because again, it's an 88 movie, like 1988, and we're almost 40 years from it being released, and it still holds up insanely well. And again, that's me saying it from a perspective that I've never seen it before, and I can see why it was pop culturally relevant for a long time. There was 2 scenes particular that kind of stood out as like, that's where that came from. Or 3 different scenes. The welcome to the family, or welcome to the party pal. That's a classic. And then the shot is just fantastic too. The first scene from the vent where it's like, come out to the beach, we'll have some play. It's like, I've seen that reference to hell so many times. And then what was the third one? I'm trying to think of what the third
Is it
one
his
was.
catchphrase?
Yeah, yippee ki yeah. When I saw, it, I was like, there it is. Does that become more prominent in the future ones?
Unfortunately, for better or worse.
So it becomes flanderized.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think a lot of the sequels fall into the trap of trying to recapture the magic and never quite does it.
Yeah.
Die Hard with a Vengeance is very good, but the other ones around it, you know.
Did they become more of what I expect action movies?
Yeah.
Okay.
They attempt to do the same thing over and over again, where a lot of this felt very special because it was an ordinary guy just in a bad situation. Well, it stops being that after his second or third time being that same guy in that situation. You know,
Fair. All right. Well, that was fun. How do you feel about my perspective coming into this? Because I feel like I dominated the conversation, and that's okay. Because I know you've been wanting to hear my thoughts on this movie for quite a while. Was it worth the wait?
No, yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I mean, and I'm glad that your wife likes it too, and that she finally you were able to bounce ideas with her too. So it's fantastic. Especially with this being the Christmas season, it's a great movie to watch this time of year.
Yeah,
Glad you
and
watched it.
funny enough, this is going to air on December 3rd, so we're starting the Christmas season with this movie here on the Miss Retrospective. But yeah, so before we wrap up, is there anything you want to plug? Anything that you feel maybe I should add to the list, or anything that maybe a future episode that we'll do? Like any. I won't take 20 years to get to it, but is there anything else that you're like, okay, that's off the list now. What's next?
I mean, if you're hitting the 80s, you gotta do Ghostbusters. I can't believe
That's
you
true.
haven't watched it at this point.
It's true. I feel like whenever I do watch Ghostbusters, I'm gonna message Justin Carreon. He is a professional wrestler who I've never really talked to per se, but he lives and breathes Ghostbusters. So much so that he's got 2 kids and he takes them to Ghostbusters conventions with him, and now they love Ghostbusters too. And he just loves it. So I'm literally gonna message like, hey, I've shared a locker room with you like 7 times now. I don't know if you remember me, but I finally watched Ghostbusters, dude. And he's probably gonna go off and be like, what? But shouts out to Justin Carreon, one half of the New Heavenly Bodies. Really cool dude. At least from my experiences here with sharing locker rooms with him. But I'm really looking forward to knocking more movies. So I'll put Ghostbusters on the list. Maybe we'll bring you back for that episode if I don't do it here in the next 2 months or so. But yeah, anything else you want to chat? No? All right, cool. Then we're going to go and wrap things up here. Thank you for everybody listening. This has been the Retrospective with Kirby Carreon, and I don't know what episode I'm doing next, but we will figure that out soon. And until that time, I'll see you on the next one.